So Rabbi Sai, I want to talk a little bit about an aspect of Megillus Ruth. We'll see how it's it's halachically oriented. The question we're going to talk about today is, how is it possible? You all know the story of Ruth, right? I'm not going to go through the whole story. You got the basic idea? Okay, good. You don't got the basic idea? Well, you pick it up. You'll pick it up. The basic idea, we know that there was a person named Elimelech who was basically on a very high level. He was a Gadol Hador, and basically there was a famine, and basically Elimelech and his two sons, Machlon and Kilyon, decided that they have to leave Eretz Yisrael because they wouldn't be able to manage in Eretz Yisrael, and basically they leave the whole family, Elimelech, Naomi, and his two sons. His two sons, Machlon and Kilyon, seem to get married to Ruth and Orpah. It says, "Yisrael have nashim my avias." They went to Moab and they married Moabite girls. And lo and behold, we all know what happens at the end of the day. Elimelech dies. Orpah and Kilyon and Machlon die. Naomi comes back to Eretz Yisrael penniless. And Ruth decides to stay with her. Which was considered a very magnanimous type of gesture. And Boaz marries Ruth. And from there comes David HaMelech. Right? So there's the story in a nutshell. Okay? That's the story. We go home now. Well, not exactly. Oh. No. The question is, what we're going to deal with today is, why is it that Machlon and Kilyon died? It says they died prematurely. Basically, Naomi lost her husband, lost her sons. Why did that happen? Why did they die? So if you look at the Targum says over there that Machlon and Kilyon married a Moabite woman, right? We're talking about the Gadol Hador here. You have to realize we're talking about people who were considered on the highest echelon in Klal Yisrael. So what does it say over there? It says over there in Targum, "Va'avru al gzeres memra da Hashem v'natlu hanashim nachrin min benas Moav." So Machlon and Kilyon actually married Gentiles. That's what it says. That even though we know eventually Ruth became a ger, that we know eventually, but at this point in the beginning of the story of Ruth, Machlon and Kilyon actually married goyim, because Ruth and Orpah was then goyim. They weren't gerim yet. And if you look at the wording of the psukim, it doesn't say like later on by Boaz. But later on by Boaz it says, "Vayikach Boaz es Ruth lias lo deisha." Over here it says, "Vayisu lehem nashim aviyos." It uses a different language. So the Targum says, it uses a different language because Boaz, when he married Ruth, that was a marriage. But over here, what happened was Machlon and Kilyon, they actually married goyim. And that's why it doesn't say Lios Lam Leisha, doesn't say Vayikach with lots of kedushin. It says Vayisu lehem, meaning that they consorted with them. Okay, that's what. So you say, wow, really? Machlon and Kilyon married goyim? That's like a pretty bad sin. You can't believe it. They actually married goyim. That's what it seems. And if you look later on, Rashi says the Targum says openly married goyim. If you look later on, Rashi says the same thing. Because if you know the story, what happened over there? Ruth and Orpah are escorting. The famine ended. They were famine for 10 years. Ruth and Orpah are daughter-in-laws of Naomi, right? Their husbands died. So it says Ruth and Orpah are escorting Naomi. What does Naomi say? Go back home, guys. Go back to Moab. Don't come with me to Eretz Yisrael. And she said, why? Because you're not going to get married. No one's going to marry you. And Naomi said, and you think that, Naomi said, I'm an old lady. So the chances of me getting married again are basically nothing. And even if I get married again, who says I'm going to get pregnant? And even if I get pregnant, you're going to sit and wait all those years to marry my son? I mean, Naomi was saying, what do you want, Ruth and Orpah? Maybe I'll have another son, and I'll give him to you, right? First of all, he says, you think a man's going to want to be with me? No, with an old lady, right? And you think I'm going to get children? And even if all that happens, you're going to wait until that child gets older? So basically, Naomi was saying to Ruth and Orpah that, you know what, for me, you're not going to get another husband. So you might as well just go back home to Moab and start your life, restart your life, right? Especially if you know who was Ruth and Orpah. They were the daughters, supposedly, of Eglon. So they were the daughters of Malchus, right? We know the old Eglon, right? Ehud killed Eglon. Okay, so you got to learn that story in the Navi. Ehud killed Eglon. Basically, these are the daughters of Malchus. So they said, go back home. Fine. So Rashi asked the question. Wait 1 minute. What is Naomi telling them? Ruth and Orpah, what are you waiting for? You're waiting for maybe I'll have a child, and maybe you'll marry that child in 20 years from now. You can't marry that, even if Naomi would have a child. And they would wait. Ruth and Naomi couldn't marry that child. Ruth couldn't marry that child. Why? Because it is their dead husband's brother. It is their dead husband's brother. You don't marry your husband's brother. Oh, so you're gonna tell me why not? Yibum. That's what Yibum is. And since Machon and Kilyon ended up without any children, you could marry your dead husband's brother, because that's what Yibum is. But we all know the famous rule. Eishes ach shalei ba'lamai. Everyone of the Yavamas knows this, that the din of Yibum is only if when the dead brother died, when the husband without any children died, is only if that other brother was born. But if that brother wasn't born, then there's no Yibum anymore. That's called Eishes. Anyone who's learning Yavamas, this is like it takes a prominent role for all different types of reasons. It's called Eishes achiv shlei b'lamai. Right? It could happen, right? So let's use biblical names. Esav died without any children. Only if Yaakov was alive when Esav died is there din yibum. If Yaakov was born subsequently, there is no din yibum. There is no din. No, you cannot get married. You have no. It kicks in the old Isser of Eishes Ach. Always the law is you cannot marry your brother's wife, right? Or your brother's wife cannot marry his brother. There's a special dispensation called Yibum. But the second Yibum doesn't take effect. You revert to the regular din of Eishes Ach, right? So Rashi has a question. Rashi asks, what is Naomi going to town? Even if I actually got a man to be with me, and even if I got pregnant, and you're going to wait for the kid? Rashi says, wait a minute. Even if all that happened, you still can't marry. Naomi and Ruth and Orpah couldn't marry that kid because Eishes Ach Shaloi Ba Ba'olamai, right? We learn it from the pasuk. Kiyush Nei Achim Yachtav. If you look up the Yibum, the Pash of Yibum Kitzeitze, it says the word Yachtav. That implies that the two brothers lived together simultaneously, right? Oh, that's what Rashi asks. So what does Rashi say? Oh, no question. Why? Because Ruth and Orpah were not married to Machlon and Kilyon because they were Goyim. So the truth is, there's no Isra at all because they weren't even Jewish then. So if Naomi would have a child and they would become Gerim, there'd be no problem. It's their dead husband's brother? No, that's not their dead husband. They weren't a husband and wife. That's how Rashi answers that problem. You could have asked even a better question. I don't know Rashi asked a better question. He should have asked a better question. This whole din of Yibum is only if you're paternal brothers. Even if Naomi had a child, it wouldn't be from Elimelech. He died a long time ago, right? So even if Naomi had a child, there's no Yibum, because they would only be brothers maternally. So there's no Yibum by maternal brothers, only by paternal brothers. So that's what Rashi should have asked. So I don't know why Rashi didn't ask the more obvious question. Be it as it may, the answer is the same answer. What would be the same answer? No problem. They weren't married to, Ruth and Orpah were not married to Machlon and Kilyon because they were Goyim, and therefore there was never marriage. And if they become Goyim later on, they could actually marry if Naomi would have a child. It wasn't going to happen anyway. Okay, so bottom line here, we have two sources. Hard to believe, and that's really what the shir is going to be about. Hard to believe that they married Goyim. We're talking about very chashuv people here. The very chashuv people here. It's hard to believe they married Goyim. So that's what the Targum says, and Rashi says it black and white. And actually, the Targum continues. And the Targum continues here. And why did they die? They died because they were over for marrying Goyim. That's what Targum says. He just says, Overall, there's remember the Shem Nashim Nachrin, Mebedas Mayev, Machlon and Kilyon. Again, these are the sons of Elimelech. They went off the derech per se, where they married chickses. And al the overall there is remember Shem, V'schatnu ba'amim Nachrin iskit to Yamein umeis atvayin, and that's why they died. That was why they got punished. They got punished because they married Goyim, and that's why they died prematurely. Open and shut case. Okay? Now, what does he mean? What does he mean they were over on a lav? That's what he says. They were over on a lav. What lav is he referring to? So seemingly, he's referring to the lav of the Torah. The Torah says, do not marry Goyim. There you go. Lois is chat and bum. Don't marry Goyim. Black and white. So since they married Goyim, they were over on that lav. And they deserve, even though usually don't die for a lav, but since, like we said, they were G'dolei Hador, you're over on a lav, you're going to die. So that's what they did. They were over the lav. That would be the simple understanding. Okay, but it's not so simple. This is where everything starts getting complicated. It's not so simple. Because if you look at the context of where it says in Torah, do not marry Goyim, right? The context is, you're going to go to Eretz Yisrael, and you're going to come upon the 7 nations that are in Eretz Yisrael. Make sure that you destroy the 7 nations of Eretz Yisrael. And don't marry them. The simple reading of the pasuk is that you can marry Ammon, and you can marry anyone you want. Any Goyim you want. Just not the 7 nations. That is a simple, in the context of the Torah, that is a simple way to learn it. And the truth is a raging machlokes about this. A raging machlokes in the Gemara. It's very complicated. I can't go through all the permutations. Is there a lav to marry any goy or only 7 am? The bottom line is, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai actually, says, no. This lav applies to any goy. You can't marry any single goy, because if you look at the Torah, it says afterwards, why can't you marry the 7 amim? He says because they're going to make you serve Avodah Zarah, right? If your wife is a guy, there's a good chance. If your wife is serving Avodah Zarah, there's a good chance you're going to serve Avodah Zarah, right? So says Reb Shimon. I know in the context we're talking about 7 amim. The simple reading of the pasuk is don't marry 7 amim. But since the Torah gives a reason, and we know Reb Shimon always looks into the reasoning during time of the Qur'an. So bottom line is the Torah says don't marry 7 amim, but it really means don't marry any goyim. Any goyim. Because, like the Torah says, it's going to make you go off the derech. If you marry a guy, you're going to go off the derech. It's like she's doing Avodah Zarah, you do Avodah Zarah. So the bottom line is, after many dafim in the Gemara, where a lot of people are saying a lot of different things, the Rambam paskins this way. The Rambam paskins this way, actually, that if you marry a guy, I don't care which nation it's from, you are over on the lav. That's the bottom line the Rambam learns. So, okay, great. So we could say the Targum is like the Rambam. It is true that Ruth and Orpah were not from the 7 Almin. That's true, they're not from the 7 Almin. The bottom line is they were Goyim. And Machlon and Kilyon, hard to believe, married Goyim. So that's what the Targum says. Finished. Died. They have to die. That's it. They say great. It's not great. It's very sad that they died. But open and shut case. They married Goyim. You don't marry Goyim. That's what they teach you. The first thing they teach you in Ohr Somayach. Do not marry Goyim. They went ahead and married Goyim. So that's it. They were over alive in the Torah. Finished. That's it.
Rabbi, when Rabbi Shimon
Right?
Avodah Zarah lav davka?
What?
They're not over to Avodah Zarah.
Oh. Okay. Open and shut case. Finished. Okay. But the problem is, if you... Great. It's finished. Great. The problem is, I didn't bring it of all the books I didn't bring. The problem is if you open a Rambam, the Rambam asks the same question. Why is it that Machlon and Kilian died? He asked the same exact question. And you figured, well, he'll say because they married Goyim. That's not what he says. The Rambam says there's a law is you're not supposed to leave Eretz Yisrael. Right? You're not supposed to leave Eretz Yisrael. We had one game last year about that. You just can't leave Eretz Yisrael for no reason. Right? And nowadays we find all type of weak terim. Oh, if I don't leave Eretz Yisrael, I'll have a nervous breakdown. I need a vacation. You know, whatever all the weak terim are. But whatever it is, I got to see the Alps. If not, my life will be missing. You know, I'll be missing some essential part of my life. Whatever. Officially, you're not supposed to leave Eretz Yisrael. That's the official law. You can't just leave Eretz Yisrael for no reason. You could leave for work. You could leave to get married. It's certain terim. And one of the terim are when there's a famine. A famine is allowed to leave Eretz Yisrael. And the Rambam lists how extreme the famine has to be. And then the Rambam says, but by the way, no matter how extreme the famine is, it's a milsa de Chasidus not to leave Eretz Yisrael. No matter how strictly halachically, if it's a bad famine, you can leave Eretz Yisrael. But strictly, but milsa de Chasidus, if you're a chassid, you shouldn't leave Eretz Yisrael, no matter what. No matter what the situation is. And he says, and that's why Machlon and Kilian died, because they left Eretz Yisrael, even though it was a famine, right? That's how the whole story started. Right? The whole story happened because there was a famine, and therefore they moved out of town. They went to Moab. So says the Rambam, why did Machlon and Kilian die? Because they left Eretz Yisrael, they shouldn't have. A milsa de Chasidus. And you're like, wait 1 minute. Milsa de Chasidus, they married Goyim. That's why they died. You either Rambam like, you're gonna tell me why Machlon and Kilian died? Because they weren't acting Hasidim. They weren't acting like Hasidim. When they were acting like Hasidim, they married Goyim. That's why they died. Oh, and the Rambam is problematic because the Rambam is problematic because, like I said, I'll be here all day. But the Rambam paskins that if you marry any Goy, it makes a difference. Sheva Am doesn't make a difference. Say, wow, so this is like a Shver Rambam. Oh. But it gets worse. Who is the Rambam quoting? Where does the Rambam get this from? That the reason why they died was because they shouldn't have left Eretz Yisrael. Most of Chasidus. You know he's quoting? I didn't bring the Gemara here either. He's quoting Rashbi. He's actually quoting Rav Shimon bar Yochai. Rav Shimon bar Yochai in Baal Basra says, you know why Machlon and Kilian died? Because they shouldn't have left Eretz Yisrael. So you're like, what's going on over here? You Rambam, you Rashbi, hold, there's a lav to marry any guy. Machlon and Kilian married Goyim. So why do you have to come and you know what they did wrong? You know what you did wrong? Well, you shouldn't have left Eretz Yisrael. Most of they married Goyim. That's why they died. They were over on a lav of the Torah, not some Milsa Chassidus. So, this is the big question that we have over here. But before we're going to answer this, things are going to get a lot worse than better. Because we established that according to the Rambam and most Shittas, there's a lav if you marry a goy, any goy, not the Sheva Amim. If you open up a Gemara in Avodah Zarah, the Gemara brings a fascinating Gemara. The Gemara says the students of Beit Shammai Beis Hillel got together and said it's not a good thing to marry goyim. Nothing. If you remember there are 18 famous gezeras that the students of Beit Shammai Beis Hillel give. One of them was that they shouldn't marry goyim. So the Gemara goes to town. The Gemara says, the students of Beit Shammai Beis Hillel said you shouldn't marry goyim? That's an open pasuk in the Torah. You shouldn't marry goyim. I need the students of Beit Shammai Beis Hillel sometime in the end of the second base. What's going on over here? So the Gemara says, the Gemara equivocates. A problem. The Gemara says, you know what? The Torah law is only if you a chasana to the guy. You make it like really official. You know, you exchange vows. You just make it really official. But Shammai Beis Hillel came along and said, even if you just live with the guy, a girlfriend, a one-time type of thing. Gemara says, what? That's what you need Beit Shammai. So according to this, The whole lav is only if you actually marry a guy. Chasnus, what we call chasnus. Gemara says what? Gemara says what? Living with a guy, derech znus, we have the famous law of kanoim paikin boy. We all know the story from Pinchas and Zimri, that Pinchas came out with his spear and pierced, killed Zimri. So I don't need Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. I don't need Beis Hillel Beis Shammai, right? I don't need Beis Hillel Beis Shammai to tell you that you can't have znus, right? Zimri didn't marry a Cosby over there. So I see from the Torah, from Kanayim Paikibai, this concept that you're allowed to kill a person who's just living with a guy, not chasnus, just having znus with a guy. We see Kanayim Paikibai. So what do you mean Beis Shammai Beis Hillel made a guy, made an issa that you can't marry a guy? Oh. The Gemara said, no. Kanayim Paikibai is when you do it openly, but for Hesed. You all know, this case, the story of Zimri was when he did it openly in public. This thing that any kanoi, any zealot could kill if someone is living with a guy, that's only if he does it openly. So that's what we need Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. We need Beis Hillel Beis Shammai to say that if you live with a guy, not derech chasnus, and if you live not openly, that's why we need the Gzeir of Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. The law of the Torah is only derech chasnus. Kanayim Boigim Boy is only open. But how do I know if you can't live with a guy, even derech znus, b'tzina? That's only Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. And that the Gemara says, no, you don't need Beis Shammai Beis Hillel for that. No, sorry, Bob. That's not true. Living with a guy, biznus, b'tzina, we already knew from who? The takana of Beis Chashmonai. Already the Chashmonai made a takana, right? You remember, I guess they were dealing with Hellenists in the good in Beis Chashmonai. So they want, I guess there's a lot of intermarriage, a lot of bad things going on. Bezdin Shachashmai Gazru Yisrael Abba when Cham Chaim Mishim Nashka and for Nashkaz. What is that? Nashka Nashkaz. And when you live with a guy, Bitsina, even not derech chasnos, even like a one-time type of thing, you're over on Nashka, Nashka. What are these things? These are acronyms. It's like you were buyer with a Nida, with a Shivcha, with a Zaina, with H. They put the book at you. The kana of Beis Chashmonai, they threw the book at you. You're hanging around with one time with a guy, even though it's Bitsina, and even though you're not marrying her, you get the Beis Chashmonai went crazy, and they said it's like you did Nida, it's like you did Shivcha, it's like you did every possible wrong thing in the world. So what do you need Beis Shammai Beis Hillel for? The Gemara says, you know you're right. Even before Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, it was clear you have no recourse to live with a guy. Either it's going to be deraisa, or it's going to be some type of earlier to come to bottom. So what did Beis Shammai Beis Hillel do about the guy? Beis Shammai Beis Hillel said, don't stay in the same room with the guy. They made an isa yichud. That's what Beis Shammai Beis Hillel added to the table. That I think Gemara says, isn't yichud deraisa? No. This is not deraisa. The kitzur. But that is what Beis Shammai Beis Hillel added to the table. Yichud to the guy. Yichud with the guy. That's what.
Any guy or opposite genders.
Right. What?
Any guy or opposite genders. No, really, so you're talking about guy.
I don't know. That's a good. I guess that's more of a modern day type of question. Yeah. It's an opposite gender, obviously. Opposite gender. Okay. It's funny because the Gemara there does talk about goy mishkazach. The next line in the Gemara there. So if you come, I'll show it to you inside. But let's leave that right now. So bekitzer, let's see now, my friends. So we're in big trouble over here. How could Machlon and Kilyon marry goyim? And again, according to the Rambam and according to the Raspi, that wasn't their sin. That was not their sin. Besides the fact that they were over on a lav in the Torah, seemingly they were over on this kanayim paigim boy, and seemingly they were over on this takana of the Bezdin Chashmonai, that anyone who lives as a guy, you get your nashkas. So what in the world is the Rambam bringing this side? Oh, you know what they did? They're gracious tzaddikim and they shouldn't have let their Yisrael because Milsa Chasidus. No, it gets much worse. Because the Gemara in Sanhedrin says openly that what happens if you live with a guy and there's no kanayim paigim by? There is no kanayim paigim by. No one was there. He did it open. There was no kanayim paigim by. So the Gemara says you're over on a chorus. A chorus midivre kabbalah. I mean, we all know there's 36 creases, but there are a lot of chorus that were written in the Navi, and they also are just as stringent or just as egregious as a chorus deraisa. It brings a pasuk here. Bagda Yehuda v'te'eva nesta b'Yisrael u'ba bas el nechor. And then it says at the end, Yicharetz Hashem lish. So besides everything else, they also have a chorus to the Kabbalah, right? So how in the world does the Ramam and the Raspi have to say some side thing that they did wrong? Oh. So in order to get out of this, we're going to make things even worse. Because even though we do have the Targum Yonason that does say that they died for marrying Goyim, but again, the Raspi and the Rambam don't say that. It seems that the Medrash also holds like the Rambam and the Raspi, that they didn't die for marrying Goyim, because the Rambam and what does the Medrash say? The Medrash says you should know that Orpah and Ruth did not become Gerim. They did not become Gerim. When Machlon and Killian married them, we're not Gerim. And why didn't Machlon and Killian make them Gerim? Why not? Medrash says because at that point in time, they didn't know that Me'avi v'lei Ma'avis, right? If you open up the Torah, in Devarim, Parashat Kiseitze, it says openly there are a bunch of people you're not allowed to marry. You're not allowed to marry a mamzer. You're not allowed to marry a mitzri. You're not allowed to marry a daimi. And it says there, black and white, you're not allowed to marry a Moavi and an Ammon, right? Right? You aware of this? Right. You can't marry a Moav and Ammon. And why can't you marry Moav and Ammon? What did they do so bad? What did these guys do so bad? We know mitzri, they weren't such nice guys, right? They're not such nice guys. But why can't you marry a Moav and a daimi? What does the pasuk say? Excellent, beautiful, amazing. That's what it said in the Torah. Because when we were traveling in the Midbar during the 40 years, or whatever it was, Moab and Ammon should have had a Karta Toif. Because why were they extant? Why were they around? Because Avram saved who? Who was Moab and Ammon's grandfather? Lot. Who saved Lot? Avram. So the Ramban says that Avram and Moab should have had a Karta Toif. But of course they didn't have a Karta Toif. So therefore they're detestable, and you can't marry into Moab. Right? Where's the passage? Yeah, here we go. It says, "Lo yavi amani omavi b'kal Hashem gam dar siri." Why? Al dvar shloi kidnu etzchem belechem b'mayim b'derech b'teitzchem Mitzrayim. Then it says, "Lo yisidish shloim v'toivasam kol yam." We're not supposed to like Moav and Ammon. Great. So we had a problem over here. Tell me, I know it says Moav in the Lashon a masculine, but are you allowed to marry a mamzeret? It also says Lo tavi mamzer b'kal Hashem. We know, even though it says a masculine, it applies to female too. It doesn't make a difference whether it's female or male. And all the other surah mitzri applies to masculine and to female. So seemingly, Ruth was usher, even if she became a ger, even if Ruth would become a ger, a gerith, it wouldn't help anything. Why wouldn't it help anything? Because you have the isser that you're not allowed to marry a Jewish, very important, a Jewish gerith or Jewish ger that was from Moav. It says, Lo yavi amoni moavi kal Hashem. Simple reading of this pasuk means that even if they become a ger, you can't marry them. So here we are. Here's Machlon and Killian, right? Machlon and Killian says the Medrash is madly in love with Ruth and Orpah over there. It says, wait a minute. Let's make them Jewish, why not? Machlon says, no, we can't make them Jewish. We can't make them Jewish. Because if we make them Jewish, they didn't know yet, which is going to be the second part of the shir, they didn't know yet, that Moavi v'loi Moavith. For some reason or other, I don't know if we'll get to that, but for some reason or other, there's a special dispensation. By all the other psulim, mitzriya, daimi, mamzer, whatever it may be, it didn't make a difference in female or male. But we have a special drasha, Me'avi v'lei Ma'avith. But as you're going to know, this was questionable. No, it wasn't clear. This is one of the halachas that were lost. When Moshe Rabbeinu died, there were 3,000 halachas that were lost. This is one of them. This is one of the 3,000 halachas that were lost. So it wasn't so clear about this. So, says the Medrash. Here's Machal and Killian, right? You see Machal and Killian? Big tzaddikim, big beard, strimel, big pay, and big tzaddikim. Okay? That's the way we're saying they are. Well, we can't make them into a ger. Because make them a ger, we'll be over on Lo Yavi Amoni Ma'avi. And they didn't know that it was Ma'avi or Ma'avis, because it wasn't so clear. So Machal and Killian said, what are you going to do? Oh, let's marry them when they're goyim. That's what the Medrash says. I'm quoting the Medrash verbatim. That Meir says, they didn't want to do any Averis, so they didn't make them into ger, because if you make them into ger, then you're over on marrying a Moabite. Wait a minute. So therefore what, you married them when they're goyim? That makes things better? How does it make things better? That makes things worse. You're over on the lav. You're over the lav. You're over on Kanayim Paigim Boy. You're over on the chorus Divrei Kabbalah. Divrei Kabbalah means, not like Hiji Kabbalah. It means, Kabbalah means Divrei from Nevi'im, right? So you're over the lav. You're over on Kanayim Paigim Boy. That's open the Chumash, this concept of Kanayim Paigim. You're over on the chorus Divrei Kabbalah. You're over on the Takana of Beit Chashmonai. What's going on over here? You actually did. It would have been better if they would just over on, if they would have made them a ger. This is what we're trying to figure out over here today. So in order to answer all of these questions, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna say, obviously this is where I'm getting to, they did nothing wrong. By marrying Ruth and Orpah, even though they were goyim, they did nothing wrong. Say, Rabbi, fuck, I did nothing wrong. We just had a whole litany, a whole list of things that they did wrong. So basically, we're going to use three details, three dispensations that they sort of like a loophole. They found a loophole to get out of all the problems, and therefore, technically, they did nothing wrong. What loophole? What loophole could it be? They were goyim. The answer is because we all know there's something called goyim and there's something called Jews. But there's some type of in-between stage. What is that in-between stage? A ger toishav. Oh, what's a ger toishav? So if you look in the Chumash and look at the Rambam, it says you can't make treaties with the seven nations. And it says openly, Loisichonem. You're not allowed to allow any guy to live in Eretz Yisrael. And it says Loisichonem. You're not supposed to say how beautiful a guy is, or how wonderful a guy is, or how pretty a guy is. Right? That's open love. And we know there's Loisichos bris. You're not supposed to do a bris, make a treaty with at least 7 amim. And we know you're not allowed to give free presents. No presents to goyim. None of that presents to goyim. Right? That's the big problem. The biggest problem with Heta Mechira is selling land to a guy in Eretz Yisrael. That's like the big problem. It's one of the biggest problems that you have to deal with. Because you're not allowed a guy is not allowed to live in Eretz Yisrael. You're not supposed to give them any ownership in Eretz Yisrael, even in times of Golus. But it's very limited what you could do. That's one of the big problems with Heta Mechira. Everyone thinks the problem with Heta Mechira is, oh, it's a joke. You don't mean it. That's a joke, right? The guy is the owner. The guy never saw the land. Doesn't know anything. The same Jew that's been working the land for the last 6 years is working for the 7th year. Right? Everyone thinks that's the problem. That's actually not the biggest problem. The biggest problem, one of the biggest problems is you can't sell land to a very sold to a guy. So what the whole Heta Mechira is also to do because you can't sell to a guy. This is okay. Kitzer. So, but there is an accepted rule. There is someone, it's an open pasuk in the Chumash actually, there is someone you can give presents to, and they can live in Israel, and you can give them tzedakah, and you can make treaties with them. Who is this? The ger toishav, right? What does the word toishav mean? The resident. There is a guy that we give him we allowed to give him free presents, right? The pasuk in the Chumash. You could give an avela to who? A ger, toishav, or sell it to a guy. Because a guy you can't give a freebie, right? So how do you become a ger toishav? Wow, it sounds like a great thing, a ger toishav. How do you do that? It's not so difficult. It's not so difficult to become a ger toishav. You come in front of a bezdin and say, I promise that I want to keep the 7 mitzvahs of Bnei Noach. All you do is make an affirmation that you want to keep Shemitz B'nai Noach. That's all you got to do. Nothing else. And then you get a stamp on your head. You get a passport, Ger Toishov. And it could be the ramam says somewhere, if I'm not mistaken, you have to say you believe in Torah Moshe. I mean, you're becoming a Ger Toishov because you're not just keeping the 7 Noahide laws. You're keeping the 7 Noahide laws because Moshe told you to keep them. Right? But the kids are very simple. You just just be a normal guy. That's all. And you get your stamp on your head. We won't kill you. According to Rambam, we don't kill. We let you stay in Eretz Yisrael, even if you're 7 Amim. Even if you're 7 Amim, you can stay in Eretz Yisrael, and we'll give you a bris. We'll make a treaty with you. We'll give you presents. We'll let you live here. We take care of you. It's a Halacha. There's a special din that if he's sick, you're supposed to take care of him. You're supposed to give him tzedakah. Great. So we're going to say, to make life a little better, that Ruth and Orpah actually became Ger Toishav. That's what happened. They actually became Ger Toishav, which is not far-fetched. Especially if you look at the Medrash said that they really wanted to become Ger. It's just they didn't want to become Gerim because they were afraid of a big Isser. So that's going to be dispensation number 1. Dispensation number 2 is we're going to say they didn't do any of this openly, right? Machlin and Killian got married to Ruth and Orpah where? In Mayav. There were no Jews here. That was the whole point. They didn't want to be with the Jews. The Gemara said that they were very rich and they didn't want to have to give out all their money. That's why they went to Mayav. They went to Mayav because there was a famine and they were trying to avoid their brethren. So, okay. So how does it answer the problem? Let's go through each one quickly. The lav. We have a lav. Don't marry goyim. Black and white. Don't marry goyim. And we're learning that, like the Rashbi and like the Ramam, means any goyim. So how in the world did Machlin and Killian marry goyim? Well, again, what does the law say? Why shouldn't you marry goyim? It says there because if you marry, it gives a reason. If you marry goyim, they will lead you astray. All right, my bar mitzvah parasha. If you guys know where it is, give me a minute. So we have here. Here, lois es chaten behem, ki yoser es binchem achrei v'avdu alikim acherim. This is black and white. Why can't you do a chasana with goyim? Because they're going to make you do a avodah. Well, that should have no application for a ger toishav. Because a ger toishav is a very fine gentleman. He believes in God. He's not going to make you go off the derech whatsoever. So that would be dispensation number 1. And the truth is, there was someone called the Rabbi. If Rabbi lived in times of Beit Yosef, he is probably the most prolific writer in Tshuvas Sfarim. He has over. If someone says, "Oh, look up at Tshuvas Rabbi," you ain't gonna find it. Unless they tell you exactly where it is, because there are over 10,000 Tshuvas from Rabbi. He's actually on the side of the Ramam sometimes when the Kesef Mishnah is not around. Right? It's like unbelievable. 10,000 Tshuvas. And he talks about this, exactly about this. And he says, black and white, green and yellow, if you marry a ger toishav, there is no lav of the Torah. There's no lav of the Torah. Okay? Right. Fine. So we got out of the lav problem. What about the Kanayim Paigimba? Well, the Kanayim Paigimba, we have two ways out of it. Because the Rambam says openly that there is no Kanayim Paigim, but also by Ger Toishav. That's an open Rambam. Everyone's trying to figure out where his source is. But there was where's Kanayim Paigim? That's only when it is B'Fahesya. They weren't B'Fahesya. They were in Mayim. No one knew about it. We knew about it because we have it written down. No one knew about it. Right? It wasn't open. So there's no problem with Kanayim Paigim. What about the chorus? We said that the chorus means the Kabbalah. So here too, we're going to have to say either one of two things. You would have said the same thing. If you look at the lashon of the pasuk says, when do you get a chorus with the Kabbalah? Aha'av ubal bas kel necher. If you marry or you have relations with a bas kel necher, a daughter of idolatry. So seemingly the same thing. If you're Ger Toishav, the chorus doesn't apply either. Right? The truth is, the Rabbi talks about this. Rabbi says, even though I said there is no lav, but but there is chorus. He says, by the chorus says, Boabas El Kelnecher. He says, yeah, but look at the end of the pasuk. The pasuk says, Ki Cholo Yehuda Kadosh Hashem. Ki Chilo Yehuda Kadosh Hashem. It says it has to do with Chil Hashem, and even now you're going to talk with the Chil Hashem. So now we're stuck. We got out of Machlon and Kilyon, a lav, no lav. No lav. Kanaim Pagan Boy, no Kanaim Pagan Boy, because it was Besina. But what about the chorus? It's a chorus with the Kabbalah. Oh, so the Rabbis himself says, and many others say, this chorus is only B'fra Hesed. Because we're saying now, this chorus is based on the pasuk, Kichil Yehuda Kadosh Hashem. What is the basic law of Chil Hashem? It's only from the 10 people, right? He says you got to kill yourself when there's a Chil Hashem, right? If a guy puts a gun to you, Machal Shabbos, so you don't kill yourself from Machal Shabbos. Yeah, but if it's from the 10 people, then you have to kill yourself. Why? Because then it's a Chil Hashem. So where's the Chil? Always? Only when there's a Hesed. So basically, oh, you're going to say to me, wait 1 minute. But clearly, the Beis Chashmonai, if you remember that Gemara in Vodazar, it says the Beis Chashmonai made everything usher. Everything usher. Sinas, Nuz, Gertoisha, everything they get made usher Beis Chashmonai. But I don't know if you kept up your how you listened to it in your history class. Chashmonai didn't live in the times of Boaz and the times of Machlon and Kilyon, right? When did Chashmonai live? In the second Beis Mikdash, right? When did Machlon and Kilyon live? Before the pre-first Beis Mikdash. So we've answered all our problems. Again, basically based on the time in history, and based on the fact that they were a Ger Toshev, and based on the fact that they did this Obed Sinah, they sort of weaved their way around every single problem. So was there a lav? No, because they were Ger Toshev. Was there a chorus? No, either because it was B'tzina or they were Ger Toshev. Right? Is it Kanaim Paigabai? No, either Ger Toshev or B'tzina. Is there Chashmonai? Yes. So anyone here is thinking, oh wow, I walk out of Rabbi Fine Shear, I'm gonna get myself a nice Ger Toshev, and I'm gonna move to, I'll move to middle of nowhere. I'll move to the Mars, and I get married to Ger Toshev. Everything will be wonderful. No, because Beis Chashmonai did make everything usher. Everything usher. At the end of the day, Beis Hillel made usher even Yichud. So, but Chashmonai wasn't around then, right? Chashmonai wasn't around then. So that's our answer to our question. Obviously, we asked the question, you Ramam and Rashbi hold it's a terrible affair to marry Goyim. So why in the world do you have to find this exotic reason why they died? Machlon and Kilyon died because they left Eretz Yisrael when there was a famine, and it wasn't a nice thing to do. It was even legal. It was legal, but they were Gedolei Ador, so they shouldn't have done it. They married Goyim. So we basically, by saying that it was a Ger Toshev, saying it was B'tzina, and saying based on the time of history, they actually did nothing wrong. And that's what the Medrash says. Machlon and Kilyon, Strimo, Payas, that's probably the way they were. That's probably the way they were. They said, they wanted to make Ruth and Arpa a Gerim. They wanted to. They said, no, we can't. Then we'll be Yeshivat Avera. Because they didn't know then Mo'av V'lei Mo'avis. So they said the best thing is to marry when they're Goyim. Because and you have no Avera at all. Oh, this is what we're going to say over here. Oh. Fine. So, according to this, this is the basic understanding. And that's why her name is Ruth. What does Ruth mean? Ruth is a gematria of 606. Because already, originally, she was a Ger Toshev, she accepted the 7 mitzvahs. And when she became Jewish, she accepted the other 606. That's why Ruth is a gematria of 606. So again, this mahalach is, which is a simple way of reading, they did not become Jewish. Only Ruth became Jewish much later on. Later on in the story, when she decided to marry Boaz and stay with Naomi, that's when she became Jewish. But until then, no one was Jewish, and we got a way out of saying that they didn't do an Avera. Okay. But there is another mahalach. Another mahalach to answer all these questions. Oh, Lord. There is another mahalach. What's the other mahalach? The mahalach of the Ibn Ezra. What does Ibn Ezra say? Not true. They were Jewish from day one. There is no way Machlon and Kilyon did not marry Jews. They were Jews from day one. They became Gerim right away. Oh. And according to this, Machal and Kilim knew that you could marry a Moabite. They knew it. They knew the maskana that you could marry a Moabite. So they made them Gerim. And what's the Ibn Ezra's raya? Because when Naomi told Orpah, what did Naomi tell Orpah and Ruth? Oh, go back to your God. Go back, return to your God. Right? Go back. So Ebenezer makes a dig. Oh, until now they were Jewish. It was our God. And Naomi said, yeah, go back home. Go back to your God. Okay? Now Ebenezer says they became gay. So then we get the question. Why didn't the ramam and Rashi say that they died because they married goyim? Because they didn't marry goyim. Who did they marry? Jews. Again, the Targum said they married goyim, but the ramam and the Rashi said they married Jews. Oh, wait a minute. What?
Oh, they also knew the judges.
They knew that. I don't know if you check your Bible, but David did become king, right? Solomon became king is because we passed him Moavi v'loy Moavite. But it was always so according to the first Mahalech in the Medrash, they didn't know it. They didn't know Moavi v'loy Moavite, and therefore that's why they didn't make him Gerim. So they actually married Goyim. According to the Mahalech, they married who? Gerim, because they knew it. Machal and Kilim didn't know this halacha. It was going back and forth for years. They knew it. Okay, now. Okay. The Shorish Yishai says, wait one contemplating second. Who's Shorish Yishai? Shorish Yishai is L'chadaydi, Roshana Alkabitz. He wrote a sefer on, besides writing books, besides writing songs, he was a big makubal. He wrote a sefer on Ruth called Shorish Yishai, right? Yishai was David's father. And he says, he texted Ibn Ezra. Ibn Ezra. He says, first of all, that's a really weak deed. That's like a really weak deed. Because Naomi said, go back to your God. That infers that until now they were Gerim. And Naomi was saying, well, leave the Gerims, go back to your God. That's a weak deed. Obviously, Naomi was being escorted by Orpah and Ruth. And they were contemplating to stay with her. So Naomi said, no, don't stay with me. Go back to God. It doesn't mean that they became Gerim. And then Shorish Yishai asked the bigger question, which you'll ask me. If they became Gerim, how in the world can Naomi tell Orpah, let's go back to your God? You can't do that. Once you're Ger, that's it. You bought into it. How in the world you, Ebenezer, could say that they became Gerim and Naomi told Orpah, go back home, go back to Moav, go back, forget about those things, go back to your God. How could that be? Oh. So the Ebenezer, right? And if even a stronger question is, if you know when what you know the story there, what does Naomi say? Go back home, you guys, forget about it. And Ruth says, no, I'm staying. Right? Orpah left, right? Orpah left. Ruth says the thing. And based on Rashi's there, Ruth says, Asher telchi elech, Asher telini olin, amech ami v'lekayich elekai. Very poetic. And Rashi says, what's going on there? Naomi said to her, it ain't so easy to be Jewish. You can't go where you want to go on Shabbos. When you're Jewish, you can't do what you want on Shabbos. You can't walk wherever you want. Asher telchi elech, I'll go on Shabbos where you go. Ruth says to Naomi, I'll go wherever you go. Asher telini olin. When you become Jewish, there's laws of yichud. There's certain laws of yichud. Wherever you go, wherever you sleep, I'll sleep. Amich, alakai, Rashi says that's, there's Asher Thomas Amusi, there's halachas of Mrs. Bezdin. Ruth says, I'll die like you die, because myself Mrs. Bezdin. This whole conversation makes no sense according to Ibn Ezra. According to the Ibn Ezra, she was a ger already for 20 years. She's been a ger for the last 10 years. She's been wearing the shaitel. She's probably even from that. She will put on the shaitel. She's been a ger. She's been Jewish for many years. What does all of a sudden Naomi go ahead and saying, I want to tell you something about Judaism over here. You can Shabbos, something called Tchum. It doesn't make sense. Because she's been a ger. If you learn like the other pshat, which is a simple way, now they are becoming gerim. That's the law. When you become a ger, you got to tell them about the mitzvahs, you got to accept it. But according to the Ibn Ezra, it makes 0 sense to say that they've been Jewish for the last 20 years. So when they were married to Machal Kilim, they were already Jewish. Okay. We can knock the Ibn Ezra, but you can't marry the Zohar. You can't knock the Zohar. The Zohar, it's called something called Zohar Chodesh, which is really just the old Zohar. It was printed later on. Different parts of the Zohar were printed later on. The Zohar Chodesh says verbatim like the Ibn Ezra. The Zohar Chadash says, you think Machal and Killian would marry Goyim? Heaven forfend. There ain't no way Machal and Killian married Goyim. There ain't no way. He's a Gedol Adar. No way. And he says, look, he brings exactly the same pasuk. Look, it says, Naomi said, go back to your God. What do you see from there? Until now, they were Jewish. And then he says, and the Zohar continues, it must be that way. Why? Because what is the name that what a name do we call Ruth? Ruth, that's her name, right? Ruth. The Zohar, if she became a ger somewhere in the middle of the story, shouldn't she have changed her name? What's the first thing you do when you become a ger? You change your name. So, if she was Ruth when she's married, if she was a goy when she married Machal and Kilyan, and then she became a full-fledged Jew later on in the story, she should have changed her name to Sprinter or something. We don't have a different name for her. This is the Zohar saying. This is the source that you're supposed to change your name when you become a goy. It must be. You know why we don't know about Ruth's name change? Because the first time we hear about Ruth, she's already a Jew. She already became a ger all the way back then. And then the Zohar says, by the way, I happen to know what her original name was. Her original name was Gilis. There you go. The Zohar says the original name of Ruth was Gilis. But Ruth was her Jewish name. Ruth was a Jewish. And the Gemara says, what was the original name of Arpa? It was Herpa. And she changed it to Arpa. Like Arpa means she turned her back on her gods. Okay. But wait a minute. So we have the Church Yishet's question. Okay, great. You, Ebenezeroth, you, the Zohar, saying they married Jews. They married Jews. So how in the world could Naomi tell them leave? How could Naomi tell Orpah you should leave? What do you mean leave? You're Jewish. And why in the world, the Zohar asks this question, why in the world is Naomi starting to tell Ruth all about the mitzvahs? Oh, the Zohar asks this question himself, and he gives a cryptic answer. His answer is, well, Naomi wasn't so sure if they did everything because they feared their husbands. She wanted to make sure that they were legit. She wanted to make sure that when they became gay 20 years ago, they really meant it. Okay? And therefore, she basically reminded Ruth of the difficulties of being Jewish. And when Ruth accepted it, great. She was, and Arpa really reneged on the whole thing. Arpa really threw the whole thing away. Okay? But wait a minute. This makes no sense. I understand. The bottom line is they were Jews the last 20 years or 10 years, whatever it may be. That's it. How could Naomi tell? How in the world could Naomi say, don't be Jewish anymore? How can you do that? No such thing. No such thing as being a... Oh. The answer is, what the Zohar is referring to is that there is such a thing. There is such a concept. Because we already spoke about this over a year ago. The Rambam, famous Ramam, it's going to take too long to go through it, but basically the Rambam is a very difficult Rambam. Rambam says, don't think Shimshon and Shlomo married Goyim. Right? If you look at the stories, Shimshon looks like he married a Goy, and Shlomo married a Goy. They married Goyim. They all became Gerim. But they became Gerim for the wrong reasons. They became Gerim to get married them. And you're not allowed to accept the Ger who becomes Ger for an ulterior motive. But, says the Rambam, if it did happen, if you did accept a Ger for an ulterior motive, well then you basically put them to the test. You're not too sure. You're not mekarev them until you see what happens at the end. And if at the end they don't keep the mitzvahs, well, you're still not too sure. You're still not too sure. It's not clear. And that's what Shlomo and Shimshon did. That's what Shlomo and Shimshon did. So there are two ways to explain this. I can't go through all the Lashonos, but the Rambam is very hard to read. He keeps on saying, you shouldn't do it. You shouldn't take Goyim for ulterior motives. And then he says, if you do it, you should check them out. And if they fail the test, he seems to be saying that they are not Jewish. But then he says, well, Shlomo and Shimshon, that's what they did. So at the end they were Jewish. He keeps on going back and forth. So they explain like this. Step one. This is the classic way of understanding the Rambam. We'll say two ways to understand the Rambam. Classic way of understanding the Rambam like this. you're not supposed to accept someone who wants to become a ger for a ulterior motive. Even if the ger says, I promise to keep all the mitzvahs, and he does promise to keep all the mitzvahs, and I promise to keep it ever, even if my husband dies, he's still not supposed to accept him. As long as they're getting married for ulterior motive, they're becoming a ger for ulterior motive, you're not allowed to accept them. Even if they sincerely will accept all the mitzvahs and sincerely will keep it forever. The bottom line is, they're doing it for ulterior motive, right? Now, let's say you do accept them as a ger. Let's say you do accept them as a ger. And what happens is, originally they keep the mitzvahs, and somewhere down the line, they sort of fall at the wayside. They stop keeping the mitzvahs. So the ramam, we don't know. We actually don't know what this guy is. It could be he was really a ger, because really he accepted it 100% for the wrong reasons, but he really accepted it for 100%, forever. And now, it's like Jews. Sometimes Jews go off the derech. They went off the derech. Or it could be, since later on he's not keeping the mitzvahs, it shows retroactively that he never really meant it in the first place. So, that's what's going on. If you accept the ger for ulterior motives, it will work if the ger actually wants to keep 100% of the mitzvahs and wants to keep it forever. Even though for ulterior motive, the ger is chal. If later on, he goes off the derech, we're not sure if he is a ger that went off the derech, or we're not sure if he never meant it in the first place. So that means Shlomo and Shimshon knew that their wife, even though these women became ger for ulterior motive, and even though they went off the derech eventually, but somehow other Shlomo and Shimshon and Shlomo knew, originally they accepted all the mitzvahs forever and ever and ever. They knew that. So therefore, Shlomo and Shimshon technically didn't marry goyim. Okay? So now, but according to the Ramam, if somehow or other you could know, a person 20 years ago became a ger because they wanted to marry a Jew. If you could somehow or other know, if you could know that they didn't actually mean it, and they just said it because they wanted to be married to their husbands, and they really meant to kept mitzvahs until the husband's alive, it comes out retroactively, they are not married, they are actually goyim. So now we know what's going on over here. That's what the Zohar means, and that's what he means. Naomi, Ruth and Orpah did become ger, and they changed their names. And maybe they fooled their husbands that they meant business, a real Kabbalah, forever and ever and ever. But somehow or other, Naomi knew that Orpah wasn't legit. Somehow or other, Naomi knew that Orpah did it l'shem Isha, but not only l'shem Isha, that she didn't really mean it in the first place. The Kabbalah was only up until my husband's alive, up until Kilion was alive. So Naomi said, now I'm going to do a litmus test to see if your ger zen was for real. Ruth passed the litmus test, so come out retroactively she was a goy all the time. She was a Jew all the time because she passed the litmus test, because she had a Kabbalah, and she showed that the Kabbalah was for real, because even after her husband died, she kept that up. Orpah failed the litmus test, so retroactively comes out her Kabbalah was never a Kabbalah, right? And this is a little difficulty, but somehow or other Orpah knew, even the Rambam says you never really know what happens. Either that now she's failing, or she never, or they never really had a mind to keep the mitzvahs in the first place. But Orpah knew, Naomi knew that Orpah really never meant it. Okay? So that's the answer. To answer up the Rambam and the Raspi. What was our question? We only do basically 10% of the shir, but we're going to end very quickly here. Basically, the question was, seemingly, the reason why, does the Rambam and the Raspi have to give these extra credit reasons why Machlon and Kilion died? It would seemingly be very, very simple, because they married goyim. So one mahalach is Taka they married goyim, and that's a simple reading. That is a simple reading, that they were goyim until later on. That is a simple reading. And we said even though they were goyim, but because of technical loopholes, they didn't do any of very marrying goyim. Technical loopholes. They were ger toshav. It was Bitzina. It was before Tikanas Chashmonai. Again, the Targum says they did die for marrying Goyim. So straight up, the Targum is the best. They married Goyim, that's what they died for. We're trying to answer the Rav and Rashbi, who says a different reason. Because they left their throne. Second Halacha is, they weren't Goyim. They were Jews. At least at that point in time, they were Jewish. At least maybe they fooled Machlon and Kilyon. Maybe Ruth and Orpah, at least, well, not Ruth, but at least Orpah maybe fooled them, because they did become Gerim. We said it became Gerim. How can Naomi tell Orpah to go back to her land, go back to her God? What she was really hoping was that Orpah would not go back. That really was her hope. And she was hoping that Orpah would pass the test. But since Orpah passed the test, failed the test, retroactively, it comes out that she was able to ascertain. We can never ascertain this. Meaning, if someone does Geirus, and right in front, the next second he does Bechal Shabbos, or comes to do Geirus wearing shorts and a tank top, we know that the whole thing's a joke. So we can't. But if they're from for a while and then they slip, it's hard for you to ascertain it. But somehow or other, Orpah was able, Naomi was able to ascertain that what? That the whole thing was a farce. And here's a chiddush: even though the whole thing was a farce, but Kilyon wouldn't die for that because he didn't know. He didn't know. He thought she was Jewish, like Ruth. Like Ruth was Jewish. Like we saw at the end of the day. Naomi was astute enough, was keen enough to figure out that Naomi Orpah is not for real. So these are the two ways to answer this up. Now, the truth is, if you look at the Medrash says, why was his name called Machlon and his name is called Kilyon? Machlon is the lashon of Mechila. Kilyon is the lashon of Kliya. Because who was the one who married Ruth? We know the two boys. So the Medrash says Machlon was the one who married Ruth. So he deserved Mechila. Why? And the Medrash says, and that's why Machlon had Yibum. At the end of the day, Machlon's name was perpetuated. Because what happened? Ruth married Boaz, and her dead husband's name was perpetuated. Machlon married Ruth, and since she married Ruth, according to our now interpretation, he deserved Mechila. I mean, he died for whatever side reasons, but he deserved Mechila because he actually married a real Jew. And married a good person, right? Kilyon, who did she marry? Orpah. Orpah was either retroactively, was not a Jew according to the Pshat. So that's why he's called Kilyon, lashon clear, lashon destruction, and he was never zocha to any type of perpetuation because there was no yibum done on Orpah, right? There was no done on Orpah. Okay, everybody, say. How much were we holding here? Well, okay, we're about to say, we'll stop here, we'll continue this next week. Lena will continue this next week. There's a whole other section to the story. Lena, okay, thank you.